Let's begin. Today is, I think, our 4 plus 4 is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12th. Let's talk about presentation. We've been doing these each weekday at noon in September to honor Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And today I'm very pleased to have two stories of recovery, one from an active duty Coast Guard member, another from a veteran Coast Guard member. And I think this is like the crux of what we do. If we had to pare down all of our work to one thing, it would be sharing stories of recovery so that we can destigmatize talking about mental illness, so that we can talk about the different ways that recovery can look and what works for people and how what works for people is different at different times, and what we wish existed for others to ultimately promote recovery and all the ways that recovery can work so that other people join in the path. For our presentation today, we have closed captioning. Closed captioning is available live on Zoom. So if you're watching this on Facebook, I will put the little Zoom link into the comments. You can switch over to Zoom and you can get closed captioning if that would be helpful to you. And with that, I am going to introduce our two presenters. So Amy Bro is a veteran of the Coast Guard and will share her story in a minute. But first we're going to hear from Lyle Kessler, who is active duty and has been engaged in recovery for a while now and is going to very generously share his story. So Lyle, can you take it away, please?
Sure. Howdy, everybody. My name is Lyle Kessler. I'm on active duty with the U.S. Coast Guard, and I'm going to share a little bit about my journey with mental health issues. So my story starts back in 1998 when I was 19. I joined the Coast Guard. I went to the Coast Guard Academy, which for those of you who may not know is like the U.S. Military Academy at West Point or the Naval Academy in Annapolis. It's just a lot smaller. And when you graduate, you become an officer in the Coast Guard, not the Army or the Navy. My first year and a half there was a very lonely, isolating time for me, despite constantly being surrounded by people. And despite playing football and baseball, I didn't really want to be there. And I also felt like I couldn't leave. It all left me really kind of vulnerable. And when I was 20, I ended up in a position where I became the victim of a sexual assault. At the time, I was very religious, traditional Christian values, and the assault was also how I lost my virginity. The whole combination of being someplace I didn't want to be, not feeling like I could leave, isolated, the experience of that trauma. Well, pretty much for the next 4 months, there weren't too many days that went by that I didn't think about or want to kill myself. Through the years, I tried various coping strategies without really realizing that was what I was trying to do, including alcohol, relationships, sex, eating, sports, weightlifting, pushing it down, telling myself that other people have it worse. This is just my life. I need to deal with it. And hurting myself, and when I was angry or depressed, or just to keep from hurting other people. As years kind of went by, other life events, a lot of which kind of on their own, I think could cause folks to maybe seek out some temporary mental health help, happened and just kind of added to the mental health issues. We constantly moved, being in the military, even within a same PCS location, we moved houses. Within the same location. My wife had 3 miscarriages. We had parenting difficulties, like lots of people do. New jobs, new supervisors. At one point, I had a neighbor that threatened to burn my house down. So, in the middle of all this, around when I was around 28, I took out an extra life insurance policy so that when I did commit suicide, my family was financially taken care of. But all the times I tried, I never really followed through all the way. The policy that I signed up for also stated that if I did that within 2 years, my family wouldn't get paid. So turns out it's a good thing I actually read the things I sign. I continued to have cycles of on and off depression and mood swings where I feel like everything was fine. Um, and I think I was past it until one day I was just overreacting again. I had a really horrible time controlling the swing of my emotions. It was like I really wasn't. Uh, it was like I was really great or really horrible, and my reactions were really over the top in the situation. Uh, it could be normal, to be frustrated or upset when your 3-year-old won't pick up his blocks, but it's not really normal to start yelling and screaming and throwing the blocks out one by one out the front door, right? Um, which kind of brings me to another point that my family really suffered along with me. I thought my wife might leave me once or twice over my anger issue. She offered asked that I get anger management a couple times. I never did. Um, and I don't know how many times I've apologized for overreacting or scaring someone because I got angry so quickly. Um, I finally got help about 2 years ago when I was 39. So span of about 19 years that I kind of dealt with all this just kind of on my own. Um, it took a lot for me to finally admit to somebody else that I've been having suicidal thoughts. I told my wife maybe 6 years into our marriage, maybe 10 years ago, that about the sexual assault. We've been married for 16 years now. Um, but I never told anyone about the suicidal, violent thoughts that I've been having. Um, like I said, I had good months and bad months. In the good months, it'd be like, everything was great and fine, and I think I passed it. And then the bad months, there'd be 3 to 6 times a day where I'd have fleeting thoughts to stuff I'd dwell on for 45 minutes or longer. You know, um, and some of the reasons that I never sought help. I didn't want people to pity me, or feel sorry for me. I didn't want to be treated or viewed differently. Uh, I didn't want people to think I couldn't do my job. I was just afraid to tell people. Um, didn't trust the people around me to tell them, I guess. I was afraid that drugs would just make me a zombie, and I wouldn't feel any emotions at all. Like they would just treat the symptom and not the problem. Um, so when I did finally get help, I got some counseling and I got some medication. The counseling helped me really identify my emotions and realize that a great deal of my anger came from my depression. I really had no ability before to even name what emotion I was feeling. It seems kind of silly, like a counselor gave me this like little like feelings chart thing with different drawings and pictures, and it says this is this and this, and I can look at it and say, oh yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now. My fourth grader got the same thing at school. But it honestly, like that, just having that like itself really kind of helped me, you know, to be able to say, oh yeah, that's how I'm feeling right now, which I couldn't actually do before. Um, and so just being able to say like I'm feeling X right now, like really helped a lot. Um, I still consider myself new to the recovery process. I still consider myself depressed, like even though I'm not currently experiencing symptoms, um, but my life is significantly improved. I'm not like a big roller coaster of emotions like I was before. The medication kind of keeps me even. I still get upset and happy and joyful and sad. I still experience a full range of emotions. They're much more appropriate to the situation. I'm not just jumping straight to full defend anymore. Um, and a few times I thought about hurting myself or someone else. I'm very fleeting. I've been able to just deal with it without going into some dark place. It's just been kind of like, oh yeah, it's there. It's and it's gone. Um, I still have to monitor myself. I've had to adjust the medication with my doctor a few times because I find myself sometimes slipping back into like just you know sitting on the couch, not wanting to do things or losing interest in stuff. Like kind of like back into depression symptoms. It's definitely not like a linear process. I don't think. It's kind of up and down. Um, but again, like life, it's there are days I feel like oh, maybe I don't actually need medication anymore, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm not. It's not. I remember what things were like before, and I'm like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to go back there. I think I'm good for now. So, um, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the basics of it, I guess. And I guess that's it.
Thanks, Lyle. I appreciate it. You shared a lot of personal details, but also a lot of what you said is very universal. And I think the most relatable thing is the reasons that people don't ask for help, that they're worried about being judged, or that it's not going to be okay, or that the help won't be the type of help that you want, or won't be personally appropriate, situationally appropriate, change you so that you don't feel like you have the same identity you had before. Like all kinds of reasons that folks have for not asking for help. Extremely relatable to me. So thanks for that. And there's a couple other things you said that I want to point out. But first, I want to give Amy a chance to share her story because, like yours, it'll be some personal pieces, but there'll be a lot of universal themes as well. So I think after Amy shares her story, we can talk about a couple of those universal themes, like reasons why you don't ask for help, how it feels to ask for help, how it feels to be open, the journey of self-awareness that you mentioned, Lyle. Like those are all like universal concepts that everyone goes through in recovery. So we can chat a little bit more about that in a second. But Amy, would you like to tell your story now, please? Please.
Yeah. So I was also in the Coast Guard. I guess a grand total active duty of close to 9 years. My depression and anxiety started for me in high school when I was 16. I did have a suicide attempt. In boot camp when I was 19, there was a sexual assault. And that was not very well dealt with. And this was back in '89. And it was kind of pushed under the rug a little bit. So that was really tough. That threw me into a depression and caused a breakdown at my first unit. It was very heavily then, in my first station, I was the only female. So being in that environment of being the only female and, having to really make sure that I pulled my weight per se and everything, just a lot of pressure. And so I tried it in unhealthy ways, such as alcohol and unhealthy sexual habits. And so the depression kind of came and went. And then had postpartum depression with each of my children. So that was kind of a different type of depression. And I always tried to be like stoic. I didn't feel like I wanted to burden anyone. I certainly can give kudos to my now ex-husband for sticking with me through all the depression and everything, because I know it affected, the family and the marriage. But things that worked for me were medication at times. And then other times I'm like, oh, I'm doing really good. Like I can get off the medication. I don't need this. And then it would, life would happen. Lots of different life occurrences. A couple of really ones that kind of threw me back into a depression were in 2007, unfortunately, my brother was murdered. And we just gotten back to Alaska, which we wanted to come back to Alaska. And it was like, oh, and so that whole thing, the concept of that and how it changed my views on what's right and what's wrong and justice and injustices, and like having just literally gotten off the ferry, had to turn around and fly back to the East Coast. That depression was pretty bad. It was like glued to the bed depression, just not wanting, and I knew that I had my kids, and then at the time my husband, and I was like, okay, I have to go on living. And so again, medication and talk therapy. And then, so my depression has kind of been situational in a way. Maybe there's always been underlying depression underneath, but, and then the next big life occurrence other than a divorce was a brain injury in 2007. And that was a depression like I'd never experienced before. That was just a really debilitating, lots of suicidal ideology during the time. And at the time I was on medication for depression, but because the way the brain injury changed my brain and the structure of the way things were being processed, I started experiencing all the negative side effects from the medication. So everything that you read on that long list. And the doctors and everyone agreed that it was actually best that I get off the medication for the time. And so I started seeking alternative therapies like holistic medicine, eating cleaner, eating healthier, talk therapy. Acupuncture had done wonders. And I was like, why didn't I try that sooner? And so I've actually been able to stay off medication. And so the recovery for me, I'm 50 now, has been, and the healing, like Lyle said, it's not linear. It's kind of, it's like waves on the ocean, and sometimes it just, you feel like you're being pulled under, and other times you're treading water, and other times sailing right along. And so, but yeah, I actually, now that things are different for me with my brain and biologically and physiologically, I do better off of medication. I do better with talk therapy, with healthy coping mechanisms, like having healthy relationships and positive people in my life, and going outside and enjoying nature, whether it's sunny out or raining or whatever it is. And then I think back, like, some of the ways that have helped me to stay positive and to cope, or my belief system, my faith in God, and of course my family and my friends, and having resources like NAMI and JAMI and the other people who have experienced similar things, and then sharing stories and hearing of other stories of recovery and hope. And I was actually thinking about it this morning because I was really nervous, to just share with everyone, open up and say things something I've never said to anyone before. And so I thought about, well, what is my success rate? What is anyone's success rate? Well, if you're here and you're breathing and you woke up this morning, your success rate is 100%. So I think that that's pretty good. My track record, success rate, 100%. Your track record, success rate, 100%. That's pretty good. So there's hope.
Amy, that was awesome. Thank you so much. For someone who woke up nervous, you did a great job of sharing your story.
Thank you.
Really, by any standard, you did a great job of sharing your story. So again, like, you did a great job of weaving in the personal details with a lot of universal concepts, and the self-awareness pieces, the experimenting to see what works for you at different times. The first thing I'd like to hear from you both, and maybe Amy, I'll ask you first. Can you talk a little bit about different times and different ways that you asked for help? Like, sometimes we ask for help very subconsciously. We don't realize we're asking for help, but we are. Like, maybe it's us being crabby on social media. That's a form of asking for help. Maybe it's a very explicit ask. Have there been, does anything come to mind for you, times you asked for help and it either was or was not successful?
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, very specific times where after my brain injury, it was, I came to the realization that I couldn't do it alone. I wanted to be strong, but I was literally physically and emotionally incapable. And it was to the point where I couldn't even stand in the shower. I had to sit in the shower, or I couldn't make it from my bedroom to the living room, so I would have to crawl. And then finally I was like, okay, I need help. I need someone to bring me a meal. I need someone to check in on me. And then other times also in the same situation, I would withdraw, and like, and then people would notice, that I wasn't as present and would reach out. Or I'd get real defiant and think I was doing good, so I stopped taking my medication. And then of course that would have negative effects, and people would notice and be like, hey, is everything okay? You seem a little off. So yeah, never was there a time when I reached out for help to like organizations and stuff where there was ever a rejection or no, sorry, we can't help you. So no matter where I was in the country, whether, you know, because there were lots of moves to the Coast Guard and lots of transfers. So never was I failed by the system in those ways. But I know that there have been others that have, especially veterans, with like not being able to get in quick enough or soon enough, or well, we can't see you here, but you know, maybe this person could help you. So that's something that I feel that definitely needs work.
Yeah, and that's a story that you hear a lot in all communities, and definitely in the veteran community. Like it's so hard to get the courage to ask for help once, that if you get put on a wait list or referred to somebody else, it feels demoralizing. And the idea of like building up that courage again after already experiencing a rejection is just tough. So well said. And I also appreciate that you were able to get help a lot. I think that's wonderful that you were mostly successful. Lyle, how about you?
So when I eventually ended up getting help 2 years ago, it was at an annual physical, and the doc just had the standard question, have you ever thought about hurting yourself? And it just kind of came out yes, because I had worked with him a lot and developed a lot of trust with that doctor. But after my initial assault, when that happened to me at the academy, I had a buddy that lived in the dorm room next to me, Josh, and another buddy at one point had wrote on the whiteboard outside of our dorm room, for emotional support hour, see Cadet Rose. And it was a joke that was intended at me because I like to take things and just be silly and run with them. And so I would go over and kind of feign like I was having an emotional crisis and like fall over my friend Josh and cry on him or whatever. And, it was this big joke laugh thing to everybody that, Josh put up with for 3-4 months, well past when the joke was, beyond its service life. But for me, it was actually like nice to have somebody I could go fake cry on and, and kind of let stuff out, like, even though like everyone else thought I was just doing a joke, for me it was like, okay, this is someone put up my bullshit for 5 minutes today, and that's literally like saved my life more than once. And so I actually named my son after Josh. But
Yeah, so that's great. And yeah, that's the adage, like there's a little bit of truth behind a joke, and it's funny to think about it in that context. And I'm curious if Josh knew that he was being helpful whatsoever.
I don't think he did at the time. I've since told him, but yeah.
That's great. So another piece that you mentioned, Lyle, that I'd like to hear from both of you about is like that, like self-awareness, like noticing what you're doing and being able to put words to why you're doing it. Like Lyle, you gave the example of the blocks with your child and being upset about blocks, and you had the awareness to think like, oh, this doesn't make sense. There's something deeper here. Can you talk a little bit more about self-awareness and how you've developed self-awareness?
Well, I mean, I don't think I really ever had the self-awareness until after I really went and got help. I think other people tried to tell me, like my wife especially, that, hey, like this isn't really normal. But from my point of view, when I was going through it, I wasn't the one really with the problem. Like other people, like this was causing this. So someone did this to me that caused the reaction. My reaction was normal. This is okay. Like, you should just connect the blocks or whatever. So until I, started getting help and realizing, thinking back on these things and thinking, wait, this really isn't normal. Like, of course, this is an overreaction. And sometimes I think maybe before I got help, I started to see like, wait, this isn't normal. This isn't, I can't do this. Like, and it's just, at some point I got to a point where I wasn't, I would do something, I know this isn't right, I'd apologize, and I'd do it again, this isn't right, I'd apologize, or I'd overreacted again, I'd apologize, and then at some point I almost stopped, like, I can't do it anymore. I stopped, like, almost like stopped caring. I'm disconnected to people, like, and I didn't want to be like that.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate those thoughts. Amy, how about you in your experience with self-awareness? Like, how did you develop self-awareness? What grew? What changed? What do you have to say about this?
I think certainly as I've aged, I've become more self-aware, and I have people in my life that hold me accountable. So that's really good. And to be able to, like, there were situations that I was in and I was like, oh, why does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening? Like noticing these patterns in my things that would happen. And I would think, well, what is the common factor here? What is the common denominator in all these situations? And it's like, okay, wait a second, that would be me. I'm the common denominator. I'm the common factor. So how am I contributing to this pattern, of negativity or of dysfunction or of not healthy coping mechanisms? And so just really being able to look in the mirror and call yourself on your own, which it's hard. It's hard. Or if someone else takes the mirror and holds it up to you and says, listen, you're doing this, and it's like, oh, am I, what do they say? Denial's the river in Egypt. So, and just kind of catching myself, and just be like, okay, like when I have thoughts that start to spin and spiral, it's like, okay, wait, why is this happening? And what is this really about? Is this really about the situation at hand with with the blocks? Like, is it really about that? Or is it really about something else deeper or something from the past? I had a friend of mine say, there's a reason why the rearview mirror is so small and the windshield's so big, that you want to look ahead and find and less, learning experience and so forth and so on. But just and trying to, stay pretty much, in the today, the now, the moment, and just, I think too, seeing all the wonder and the amazing and the miracles. I mean, just the fact that like I woke up this morning and I'm breathing, that's just incredible. And just getting back to that, I have 100% success rate. So, but just, yeah. And I think too, it does come with some, they say with age comes wisdom. And then I have some older folks in my life that, they share their stories and just kind of learning. Yeah.
I appreciate that. And if I can just get on my soapbox for 1 second, I think another key component of that self-awareness is having language. Like Lyle, you mentioned the poster with the smiley face and it says happy underneath it, the angry face and it says angry. And like one metaphor that comes to mind for me is clouds. Like I don't know anything about clouds. So I look outside and I see clouds and I say, oh, there's clouds. But if I was able to name the clouds, if I was able to like look at like a cumulonimbus cloud, which I remember that name, but I have no clue what it means, and like knew what cumulonimbus meant, I would be able to like say something intelligent about the weather. Or I would see cirrus clouds and say, oh, well, this thing is going on because I know that that's a cirrus cloud. But because I don't know anything about clouds, I just look outside and see clouds. And like having that language to put to your emotions, to your thoughts, to your actions, being able to label that stuff is, I feel like opens up this whole world of insights that, and it really just like accelerates your self-awareness because you're able to put words to things instead of having a general sense of things. So that's my one little soapbox that I want to get on for a second here. Last question I want to ask you both. You both mentioned that there's ups and downs. It's not a linear path. Recovery takes a lot of twists and turns. And one phrase that I use for that is like resilience. Like life exists, life is difficult, but a big piece of recovery is developing resilience so that when something crummy happens, you have, as Lyle put it, like the appropriate reaction. Something sad happens, yeah, absolutely, you're going to be sad. That emotion is not bad. But is it sad where you're able to express your grief and feel better? Or is it sad where you just feel discomfort with it, become angry, and throw a chair across the room? So I think that resilience helps you have that appropriate reaction. And so I'd like to just hear from you both, and maybe Lyle, you first, about the concept of resilience. Do you feel like you have developed anything, coping mechanisms, strengths, whatever it is, to like make you more girded against the crappy stuff that inevitably happens in life?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have. think that uh, going back, I think a lot of what you said about language honestly helps, and having, you know, honestly, the awareness to be able to say this is actually what I'm feeling right now for me. Um, you know, just to be able to know this is what I'm feeling and that's okay. You know, and then to, you know, allow yourself to feel it and kind of go with it, and know that it's okay. You know, and then everybody has that, emotions. Um, you know, it's yeah, you know, crappy stuff's gonna happen. You know, and then it's, you know, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't
No,
know.
that's fine. That's fair. Well, let me tell you some things that I've heard you say that make me think that you have plenty of resilience that you've built up. Like you're able to label your emotions and then speak to them, right? Like that's huge. Like that allows you to engage with the feeling and express it positively. And like you mentioned a couple times, I'm trying to look at my notes, about speaking with your wife and saying like, hey, this thing happened, and now this is my thoughts about it. Like that helps you address things in a rational manner as opposed to throwing blocks away. So that's one, like those like tips, tools, tricks, whatever you want to call them. That's the stuff, the actions that you take, the words that you speak that keep you in a better place. That's what I'm hearing from you. And I don't want to put too many words in your mouth. At a certain point, that gets inappropriate. I'm trying to repackage what you've said. But I don't know. That's how I think about it at any rate.
I
Um,
think that's right. Did a good job.
Thank you. And I feel like there's other things too, like for some people, like running is their thing, and like there's always like the classic story that you'll hear, like somebody stopped doing heroin and ran 10 miles every day as a part of their recovery because they think that that's a big piece of it, and like that's, you know, that action does a lot of things. I think one thing is the resilience. So like telling yourself that I do this thing, this is like my running is my magic talisman that keeps me protected while life happens. It can look a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. For me personally, like having meaningful work, and I've considered this conversation very meaningful, like that's one of
Mhm.
my big resilience things. Like I can have something crappy happen tomorrow and like I can immediately bounce back on Monday and with doing meaningful work that keeps me in a good place. So like resilience is a broad topic. Maybe like clouds, if I had more language around resilience, I would be able to see more nuance there. Um,
Hmm.
that's what I'm trying to give you some credit for having some resilience, because I think that that's a big piece of recovery, and talk therapy in particular. A lot of it's about resilience. Amy, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of looking at the words and the closed captioning as they're coming across because it helps my brain to process things. And to actually see the word resilience on the screen, it's which is what, like again, and then silence. And silence is what? Quiet, like peaceful. So in these times when life does, you know, like Lyle said, life, it's gonna get crappy, it's gonna get hard, it's gonna get sad, you know, what do we do? And so instead of like picking up the chair and throwing across the room, it's like one thing I really learned, which was great in acupuncture, and it wasn't just so much about like getting stuck with pins for me, some people call them needles, was like honoring our emotions, and that if you're experiencing grief, like a lot of people are like, well, I just need to hurry up and get over it. Like especially in American society, we just, you know, so quickly just, you know, it's like, well, just sit with the emotions for a few moments and let them be what they are. Try not. And so, yeah, and just, you mentioned, you know, open, good conversations. I recently, encountered someone, you know, and it's always like, thank you for the good conversation. You know, it's always it's a very thankful exchange between two people. And I was fortunate enough to spend time years ago in Portugal, just a week, but they don't really have a word for you're welcome. Everything is simply thank you over there. They're so thankful. And so just yeah, just resilient, just trying to make the healthy choices and you know, calm myself on my own stuff, or notice when I'm slipping in back in that old past negative patterns or what have you. So, and just surrounding yourself with good, positive people, you know, people who are also, you know, are on different paths, you know, different ways, different, you know, how do they cope? What do they do? What works for them? Well, I could try that. That might work for me. And just being really open and having those good conversations. And then having other people, you know, be able to kind of reflect and say, well, this is what I hear you saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you know, so sometimes other people can see things in us that we can't see ourselves, and speak life into that. So I think they answered the question. I don't know.
Absolutely did. And I'm trying to think of a clever way to transition into our very last thing, but I can't. So let me just very abruptly say that the three of us met promoting a program called Together with Veterans. And I'm going to pull the flyer up right now on my screen. There it is. And what this is a program sponsored by the VA for veterans to promote suicide prevention messaging to other people in their community. So the community that we're talking about is the Juneau veteran community in particular. And we had one meeting a few weeks ago. The VA wanted to see if like there is interest in this project, this program, whatever you want to call it. And we had some folks show up. You were two of them. You were both very enthusiastic about it. We're going to have another conversation with them next week on Thursday, like it says here, the 24th, 4 to 5:30. And we want to get some other folks there who are veterans or who care about veteran well-being to join this group. And the idea is that this group is going to be together for 2 years. The first year will be largely a planning year, talking about like, all right, what services exist that promote suicide prevention? What messages are people listening to? What messages do people need to hear that don't exist right now? And then the second year is actually doing the work. So maybe it's promoting going to therapy. Maybe it's handing out gun locks and talking about restricting access to lethal means, which is a suicide prevention strategy. Maybe it's one of a million things that I've never thought of before. Who knows? The point is this group is going to get together for a year and with some funding from the VA, put together plans for how this messaging will look. And Lyle, what do you think about this? Why are you excited about it? And Lyle, you can go first.
I think it's a great idea. It's awesome, and I'm very excited to be part of it because you know, like part of what I've learned being in job now is you know, Alaska has the second highest, I believe, suicide rate of the 50 states, and I know within the Coast Guard, I think we've had 9 this year. And so it, you know, for whatever reason, Alaskans are more susceptible to it. And I know there are issues within the veteran community that lead veterans to have these issues as well. So it's something that I think it's with us here in Alaska very hard. So it's, you know, obviously has a personal connection with it. It's just something I'm excited to involve in.
Awesome, thank you. And Amy, what are your thoughts about this?
I was really excited to see it on Facebook, which I'm not on a lot, but I was part of the starting crew at the local Juneau VA clinic, the community-based outreach clinic, in October of 2010. So the clinic's coming up on its 10-year anniversary. And I was a health technician and just working with a lot of veterans from all the different eras. You know, the Vietnam veterans, had the honor of meeting 4 World War II veterans, which was amazing. And then working with the Coast Guard duty population because I worked in the lab as well. And so when I saw this opportunity, it's like, wow, a way to hopefully really, you know, make a difference. Because like Lyle stated, the rural rate is higher certainly and amongst veterans, and I believe that's correct, that Alaska is number 2 in the nation for that. And so just really excited about being able to reach out and help in ways, since I'm no longer a part of the VA and in the capacity of, being employed by the VA. But just in getting so many different people on board with it, and that the program, the wheel's basically already been created. It's not like we're going to be recreating a wheel. And so, yeah, just reaching out, and I've been emailing lots of people, and I just recently moved, and I noticed that one of my neighbors has a veterans plate. So I went and knocked on their door and, said, hey, there's this thing. Would you be interested? And if you're not, maybe someone else, would, or just, so yeah, just looking forward to the planning of it and being a part of it and bringing awareness, really.
Great, well said. Thank you both so much. It's been really helpful. We had, I think, 15 people watching this live, and there's going to be folks watching the recording. We're going to get quite a few folks afterwards. So your words matter, and it's going to help people think about themselves and think about other people that they'd like to help. Like, there's a whole chain effect when we have these conversations in public. So thank you for being a part of making Juneau a better, healthier place. I really appreciate it. And we've gotten a couple comments from folks thanking you also. So I appreciate it. Do either of you have last words, final words?
I'd just like to say thank you. I mean, thank you for the work that you do, and thank Lyle and everyone else who's been sharing and is gonna share.
Same thing.
Great. Appreciate it, both of you. And we'll talk next week, Thursday, for Together with Veterans. I can't wait to see you again.
All right. Have a beautiful day. Bye.